Alright, so I'm not gonna try and spin it any other way. This is low-hanging fruit, but sometimes low-hanging fruit is exactly what you need to get the job done. What's up, everybody? I'm James. Welcome to Mechanical Mayhem, and welcome back to the Mech Lab. A little technician in the background, pretty cool. This is where I take a look at a particular game, to look at a particular mech to discuss a particular build. In this case, we're looking at MW5 Clans, getting our clan mech engineering on, and looking at one of the new mechs from Flashstorm. In fact, this is one of the new standard battle mechs, something we haven't had yet in MW5 Clans. This is a 35-ton light mech, the Jenner IIC, the clan version of the Jenner. It is, well, it's a Jenner, and I'm not a big fan of Jenners, but I can't deny that they have some pretty decent capability. So, this is not an Omni-mech, meaning it doesn't have Prime or other Omnipod sets, so I'm calling it a Retool build. A Retool build for the Jenner IIC-A. So, with that said, let's take a look at it. So, as you can see up here, it says Battle Mech. And on something like the Warhawk, it says Omni-Mech. So, what that means is when you go to the marketplace and you want to purchase some light mechs, you see the Fire Moth here hasn't been unlocked yet. It costs 100 merit points. Then we see a bunch of Jenners, and they're only 30 merit points a pop. This is because it's a standard battle mech, so it doesn't have modular variants like Omni-mechs do. They're built from the ground up a very particular way from the factory. So the standard Jenner IIC has a bunch of missiles. And if you want to make use of ballistic or energy equipment, you need to find a Jenner variant that has that. So you can't just throw FY components onto a Jenner IIC, you have to get a Jenner FY. So that is just some food for thought. But as you can see, each individual variant is accessible in the Smoke Jaguar campaign anyway, right away. And it's cheaper than getting an Omni-mech. Same thing for Kerensky's. We have unlocked Jenner IIC-A, and you can see his Kerensky's cost is less than most of the other light mechs that we have access to. Now, what's interesting about the 2C-A is that it's a MechWarrior Online variant. It didn't exist before MechWarrior Online. And the reason why that's interesting is because, for some reason, it didn't translate over to MW5 Clans fully, because it's 2 tons lighter than it should be. So, let's check out the stock real quick before getting to the custom retool. So, the reason why this is 33 tons is because we do not have any double heat sinks anywhere. This mech is supposed to have 2 additional double heat sinks to deal with its 6 small pulse lasers. It doesn't have that. You can use it without it, it just generates heat more, it doesn't dissipate as fast. But the MechWarrior Online version has those 2 extra double heat sinks. We don't have them here, so you have 2 tons of weight to spare. You can either throw those in, or you could up armor this with 2 tons of extra armor dispersed how you see fit, and make use of the build just as is in its stock form, right? Otherwise, it has a modest armor rating as you'd expect for a light mech. Instead, what I went ahead and did is I kept those 2 tons extra, or like open weight, and I added 3 tons to it by making every small pulse laser an ER small laser. Pulse lasers, or ER small lasers and small pulse lasers, have a weight difference of a half ton. The small pulse laser is 1 ton, the ER small is a half ton, and the ER small has a greater max range, where the small pulse laser is 330 meters base, and the ER small is 450 meters base. So, to really reach out and touch the enemy a little bit sooner for the early game, I went with this, giving it small ER small lasers, plus it frees up 3 tons because we replace 6 pulse lasers with 6 ER smalls. That gives me 5 tons of space available, so I did 1 ton of armor in both side torsos, the center torso, and both arms. Really giving us a pretty decent armor rating increase, giving us some better survivability, and I left all of the jump jets alone, which there are 7 in total. If you wanted to go a bit further, you could remove the jump jets, or just leave the 2 in the 1 on each side torso, so the 2 in your side torsos total alone, remove the rest, and put another bit of armor in the center torso, and even armor up the legs a little bit. And to take that to the extreme, I did that in this particular retooling, and I downgraded the engine. Standard battle mechs, you can play with the engine, so I went from a 315 to a 300, which gave me even more armor to play with. However, look at that cost. Messing with your fusion engine costs a lot of Kerenskys, so that's over double the cost of buying one of these Jenner chassis in the marketplace. So really not something to consider doing unless you really feel like you have a excess of Kerenskys lying around. We'll just stick with the cheaper variant of just replacing the AR smalls and putting 5 tons of armor onto this chassis. With that being the case, we have a respectable armor rating, above and beyond what you'd expect for a light mech, and you can check it out in the sim pod in the shooting range. So keep in mind the shooting range is not going to be the perfect representation for damage. Mechs in campaign are going to be able to take some more damage, typically because they're not just standing there taking it, and depending upon your difficulty, there might be some minor damage reduction or what have you. So here we are with the Jenner IIC in the shooting range. I'm going to get my allies out of the way. And you'll notice the speed of this mech. It's no fire moth, but it's still very quick. So it has pretty good speed, and it has pretty good jump capabilities, allowing for really good maneuverability, close with the enemy, and take them out. So let's do a test. I've used this thing in campaign, so I know exactly what's going to happen, but let's do a test anyway in regards to this Atlas right here, getting really close so we don't miss just the center torso. I'm going to Alpha Strike, and we're going to see how many Alpha Strikes it takes in the shooting range, and take that with a grain of salt, of course. We're really going to see the cycling of these lasers and the heat. So, as we can see, heat's a non-issue as we just get into our second Alpha Strike, pretty fast cycling. As our third Alpha Strike, and the heat, of course, it goes up, but it drops really quick. And with 5 Alpha Strikes, we're going to take out this Atlas.
Star Commander's target is going critical.
And our heat is a non-issue. It didn't even have to get to halfway. It dissipates very quickly. Meaning, you can literally just shoot forever, and as long as you have stuff in range, you're going to be able to take it out without any worry in terms of armor. I mean, not armor, ammo. Like, there is no ammo to worry about. There is no heat generation to really worry about either, making it pretty efficient for dealing with enemies in the early game of the Smoke Jaguar campaign.
New hostile detected.
Now, it's not always about taking out mechs right away, which of course this can do against light mechs. This is an absolute menace against light mechs. See, it's also about crippling your opponent sometimes. Your enemy mechs can be a pain to target. So let's say you have multiple light mechs zipping around the battlefield while you're zipping around the battlefield. It can be a bit hectic to target things. Well, you just got to line up a pretty decent shot and take out the leg. And now that Locust is going to have a much harder time getting around, allowing you to reposition yourself without it being able to close as fast and take on other things. Maybe the Centurion here work on crippling its offensive capabilities by blowing off its autocannon 10. And then we can move around and, find another target and take out a tank, and then we can finish off the Locust here, and then we can go back to this Centurion and start laying into it. And it's just a process of...
Star Commander's target breached! Get back!
It's just a matter of target priority a little bit, crippling either speed or offensive capabilities or both, and then finishing things off. It's not always about outright nuking something in 0.5 seconds. Sometimes you just gotta survive, and the best way to survive is to deal with speed, as you just did there. That mech is nearly taken out. And in the case of offensive capability, just blowing off some arms, some other weapon spots, and what have you. Now, as far as campaigns go, we have the Flash Storm Ghost Bear campaign, we have the Smoke Jaguar campaign. The Ghost Bear campaign is interesting because we have the whole logistical issue it's playing off of, so what you have access to isn't necessarily going to be there all the time, especially once you purchase it. So, the Jenner IIC-A may not be accessible in the early game where you would want to make use of it, so it's going to be a case of, do you really want to get this unlocked or not? It's up to you in that capacity. In Smoke Jaguar's campaign, when you get to Santander, you have access to this if you want to unlock it, so you don't have to wait or anything like you do with the Adder. You can unlock it the moment you get to Santander. And they they retooled the merit points and currencies you get, meaning you can unlock this mech the moment you get to Santander, and you'll still have the same amount of merit points, and in fact you'll have 10 more merit points than what you started off with in the Smoke Jaguar campaign prior to Flash Storm coming out. So in terms of resources, you're not really taking a hit per se, because you can purchase this for merit points and still have the same amount of merit points you were strategically utilizing in your concept of progression in the campaign. Anyway, now we do have all of our equipment in our arms, so we got to be careful on taking arm damage, but it does mean we can deal with fires just fine. And with high cycling capability, we have the ability to just become pretty decent on anti-air, and then of course deal with tanks and mechs, no problem. As far as drawbacks, well, range, right? We did increase it by going from small pulse lasers to ER smalls, where our range is still going to be a factor. Granted, it's going to be more than sufficient for dealing with inner sphere targets, but it's still a factor nonetheless.
Target destroyed.
On top of that, we are a light mech, so we are going to take damage. And particularly, our legs are particularly thin on the armor. And one thing I did notice, and you'll probably notice as well, is your legs are going to have armor breaches kind of regularly if you're not careful, which is why if you don't really care about having crazy jump jet range, you can ditch the jump jets in the legs and put some armor there instead to help out. You're still going to notice the legs are pretty weak in terms of armor. But it's a pretty decent, cost-effective early game build that can get you through, and considering, you know, it's just meant to be replaced eventually in the way these games work, it's really cost-effective for that exact strategy. At least I think so.
Target destroyed.
In any case, I did enjoy the functionality of the build, even though I'm not really a Jenner fan. The speed and the firepower and maneuverability means you can really get certain missions going pretty effectively, pretty quickly, and almost feel like you're speedrunning some stuff in the early game. Alrighty, so what are your thoughts on the Jenner chassis, the Jenner IIC, in this case the 2C-A? Do you keep the pulse lasers? Do you just put, like, I don't know, a ER large laser and some ER smalls on here? What do you do, if anything? Share it in the comment section. Thanks so much for taking the time out of your day. Just like I Alpha Strike these targets, consider Alpha Striking that subscribe button. In any case, that's all I got for you in this one. So until next time, take care.